Just declare the meeting open, and before we start proceedings, so let's start again. Let me call upon Deputy Mayor Winmar to do an acknowledgement of country.
Thank you, Worship. I'll begin by acknowledging my elders past and present, and tonight we gather on my ancestral land. Ngalat nyirin kurang kolang ngalanoich niji nonga buja. Nonga mot jerpen niji kwabadok nonga buja kuralong. From the beginning of time to the end, this is Noongar country. Noongar people have been graceful keepers of our nation for many, many years. Jindin karajin jerpen jindin wern nonga buja ngalamaya maya buddha. We ask that you look, listen, understand, and embrace all the elements of Noongar country. This is forever our home. Kai wanju ngan kot jerpen niji nonga buja darjali wangini nonga buja. Hello and welcome. My heart is happy as we're gathered on country and meeting here on Noongar country tonight. Thank you.
Can I also just advise that in accordance with the city's live streaming policy, by being in attendance today, you give consent to be included in our live recording. Can I also, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you here, and also before commencing proceedings, I would like to acknowledge that we come together on the land of the traditional land of the Noongar people, and we pay our respects to our elders past and present. Can I call upon Councillor Rouse to do the dedication?
Thank you, Worship. May we, the elected members of the City of Kwinana, have the wisdom to consider all matters before us with due consideration, integrity and respect for the Council Chamber. May the decisions made be in good faith and always in the best interests of the greater Kwinana community that we serve.
Thank you. And just for the public gallery, Councillor Ivy Penny is attending the meeting via remotely. Are you there, Councillor Penny?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Attendance, apologies, leave of absence previously approved. We have Councillor Sherilyn Wood as an apology. Public question time. In accordance with the Local Government Act of 1995 and Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996, any person may, during public question time, ask any question. In accordance with Regulation 6 of the Local Government Administration Regulations of 1996, the minimum time allowed for public question time is 15 minutes. A member of the public who wishes to raise a question during question time is to state his or her name and address. Members of the public must provide their questions in writing prior to commencement of the meeting. A public question time form must contain all questions to be asked and include contact details, and the form must be completed in a legible form. Please note that in accordance with Section 3.45 of the City of Kwinana Standing Orders Local Law 2019, a maximum of 2 questions are permitted initially. An additional question will be allowed by the presiding member if time permits following the conclusion of all questions by members of the public. There is a couple of questions from a member of the public. Could I ask you to come forward, Mrs. Dodd, and state your name and address?
Thank you, Mayor Peasy. My name is Gail Dodd, and I'm from 36 Stepney Close, Wandy. I had the pleasure of a meeting.
Sorry, could I just ask you to hold on a sec? Councillor Rouse and Councillor Koenig, you just put your microphones on because Mrs. Dodd's not being picked up by the recording.
Thank you very much. My first question is, for public safety, has budget been allocated to marking white lines on Wandy Drive, Wandy?
Mr. CEO? Mr. Elkin will answer.
Through you, Mayor. The city doesn't fund white line marking. That's a state government responsibility. I believe we have previously made that request to Main Roads, the agency responsible, and they have informed the city that it doesn't meet the warrants for line marking, but certainly we can ask that question again to see if we can get it marked.
May I make a comment on that?
Yes.
The reason for the request is that Wandy has become quite a thoroughfare for traffic because people are using navigators to find the easiest route instead of the freeway, and so it's a safety concern. And thank you very much for bringing it up with Main Roads. My second question, with regard to agenda item 4.17, which you will be discussing tonight, of Council's local planning strategy, bushfire management, Wandy Special Rural Area is classified as bushfire prone. The strategy states that the City of Kwinana has a responsibility to ensure sensitive or potentially hazardous land uses do not increase the risks of fire, risks on life and property. In the event the Council approves the pending development application for a telecommunications tower on a private bushland block at 415 De Hare Road, Wandi, and owners of properties in the area suffer death, injury or loss of property due to a fire caused by the tower, what liability does the Council, individual councillors or council staff incur? And as a footnote to that, the US Environment Health Trust fact sheet, federal legislation on wireless telecommunications, states quite clearly that damages in the billions of dollars have been caused by wildfires from cell towers. Thank you.
Mr. CEO?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can't answer that question as that relates to a development application which Council hasn't considered at this stage.
I'm glad it's on record. Thank you.
Thank you. Receiving a petition, presentations, deputations. Do councillors have any petitions, presentations or deputations? No, I have received a petition with 154 signatures from a group of residents in relation to the telecommunications tower, and I'd like to table that. Do we move that?
Just that it be received.
Can someone move and second that it's been received? Moved Councillor Rouse, seconded Deputy Mayor. Speak on that? No. Put it to the vote. All in favour? Councillor Penny?
Yes.
Motion carried. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held on the 24th of April 2024. Is there any additional information? Councillors have any questions? Someone like to move that way? Moved Councillor Acker, seconded Councillor Kearney. Would either councillors like to speak on those items? Anyone speak against? Put it to the vote. All in favour? Councillor Penny?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Declarations of interest. Councillors. Indeed, I have. We'll go back to 6.3, deputations. Those people sitting in the gallery thinking, oh, we've missed out. It's okay. The first deputation is from Alf Lay. Is Alf here? Yep. Alf, if you would like to come forward. Is that microphone that's need to be turned on? Maybe if you could just turn Councillor Penny's microphone on Councillor Rouse. That's great. If you want to start, Mr. Lay.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Chief Executive Officer and Councillors. I'm Alf Lay and I'm the Group Manager Development at Satterley Property Group. Satterley, which now incorporates recently LWP Property Group, has been working in partnership with the Housing Authority as a major landowner within the Casuarina Central Precinct to undertake the planning and development of the Central Precinct for almost 6 years. As the councillors may be aware, the precinct is challenged by various considerations, including fragmented land ownership, environmental issues and major infrastructure upgrade needs. An expert consultant team, including environmental, retail, traffic, civil engineers, hydrologists, urban designers and planning professionals have been working to facilitate the best outcome for the subdivision and development of land and provide for housing supply in a time of great shortage. Rigorous testing has informed the proposed structure plan amendment, in addition to extensive investigations and ongoing engagement with landowners and stakeholders, including the City of Kwinana since 2018. We are disappointed that the officers have been unable to put forward a recommendation in support of the amendment. Notwithstanding, we do appreciate the time the planning team has taken to engage with us and prepare its recommendation. I'm here today to present and reinforce our position that the proposed amendment, in our opinion, is the best outcome for the Casuarina Central Precinct that appropriately balances the various competing site planning matters. I would like to respond to some of the key matters raised in the officer's recommendation so that the council is able to make a more informed decision about the structure plan amendment. I do appreciate that following councillor consideration, there is a further assessment to take place by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage on behalf of the WA Planning Commission, and I look forward to continuing to work with the city to resolve the outstanding issues through the process and hope for a positive outcome that enables the urbanisation of the precinct and wider Casuarina area. Firstly, and the structure plan is up on the screen, hopefully you can all see it, the amendment. Firstly, can I reinforce the key driver for this amendment? As the city will be aware, a structure plan currently exists over the central precinct, which is just south of Orton Road, with this amendment seeking to incorporate the lots to the north of Orton Road within that approved structure plan, including the Peel sub-regional drain, modifying the primary north-south road through the precinct and rezoning the land identified for a local centre to residential. The key driver for this amendment is to facilitate the delivery of the north-south connector, which the city recognises as a critical infrastructure item that is required to unlock the precinct for urban development, as well as facilitating development in the southern precinct in the future. A north-south connector through the precinct is currently enabled by the existing structure plan, albeit it allows for a poorer outcome, as it's proposed to go right through the resource enhancement wetland north of Orton Road. The amendment before you proposes an improved road alignment which responds to the alignment of the constructed portion of the road in the northern precinct. Importantly, it mitigates impacts on the wetland in the northeast corner of the precinct, and it achieves an enhanced urban design outcome for the precinct. The city has agreed in the officer recommendation that the amended alignment is an improvement, and it's supported in principle in the officer's report. Satterley has engaged extensively with Agle Royal, the developer and landowner of the northern precinct, to ensure the design of the road integrates with the design of the as-constructed northern portion and provides for the operational needs beyond the future residents within the central precinct. Agle Royal has provided its support for the proposed amendment in full, especially the design and construction of this portion of the road. Whilst this infrastructure item has been the key driver for the amendment, Satterley has always had a desire to help progress the development of the precinct. Following discussions with the city and the city officer, Satterley agreed to include the Peel sub-regional drain into the amendment out of good faith. The land north of Orton Road, including the Peel sub-drain, has remained in an unplanned state for many years and is identified in the Casuarina North Structure Plan as an area subject to future planning. No future planning has progressed or is intended to be progressed if not for Satterley's leadership. Satterley has balanced the various considerations and challenges as reflected in the structure plan amendment and maintains the proposed design is the best outcome on balance. Without this amendment, no structure plan exists over this area and the land cannot progress to the next steps in the planning process. This may be the only opportunity for structure planning to be progressed on the land. The landowners in the area have been informed by the city in the past about the need for a structure plan to facilitate urban development of the land, and notwithstanding this, no one has willingly pursued this exercise. In the absence of a plan, there is no certainty about future development of this land and the provision of key infrastructure. Satterley has been happy to assist by progressing the planning of these lots and has invested significant time and resources to this exercise. However, if the city considers a better outcome is for there to be no plan, we would be happy to compromise and defer the detailed planning to a later stage to be undertaken by another party, but only on the basis that the primary reason for the amendment, which is to revise the north-south connector alignment through the precinct, is supported and advanced. It would be unfortunate to see the land return to an uncertain state and be left unplanned, potentially for years to come, with the unintended consequence of deferring the construction and release to market of around 620 residential lots within the approved structure plan area with 1 in 9 of those lots being made available for the government's social and affordable housing programs, particularly in a time of severe housing shortage and increasing cost of home ownership. And I'm referring there to the land that's owned by the Housing Authority. Regarding the wetland and district hard court matter raised in the officer's recommendation, and you see that on the screen, the green land, the attentiveness by stakeholders to ensure the key environmental values are protected and the important district infrastructure is delivered for future residents is appreciated. Satterley remains committed to ensuring sustainable planning outcomes are achieved and has been working diligently to achieve best outcomes that will conserve the environmental values within the wetland area and deliver the district recreational infrastructure to the benefit of future communities. The officer's recommendation has made it clear that there are conflicting opinions between the proponent, the city, DWER and DBCA about the wetland mapping and what is considered to be an adequate buffer distance, be it 30 metres or 50 metres to the resource enhancement wetland. It is acknowledged that these differences in opinion have been exacerbated by a perceived lack of flora and fauna survey work and habitat assessment. Satterley has made significant attempts to have this work undertaken for some years, including most recently in spring of 2023. In the absence of conclusive information and on advice of the project's environmental consultants, a 30-metre buffer has been proposed, which is considered adequate to conserve the values of the wetland, particularly areas that are known to be of higher value. In fact, this distance is consistent with the buffer distance provided to the two resource enhancement wetlands located adjacent to the primary school and along the eastern boundary of the site, which was approved by the WA Planning Commission as part of the current approved structure plan. The buffer distance of 30 metres is also in accordance with the recommended separation distance of between 10 to 50 metres provided within the draft guidelines for the determination of wetland buffer requirements. It is intended for the additional survey work to be undertaken this coming spring, subject to being able to gain access to the land. Satterley is happy to undertake further studies to confirm the proposed design is the best option and welcomes assistance from authorities to facilitate access to the land if required. We are confident there is sufficient area between the wetland buffer and the proposed north-south connector to accommodate the hard courts, and rigorous testing informs this position. The proposed location for the hard courts is optimal for several reasons, including providing for a location for a location that is accessible from key road connectors, adjacent to the school site, and contributes to the protection of the wetland values. Using the land, which is proposed for the hard courts, for residential purposes in comparison, would pose much higher risks to the wetland from bushfire, impacts from domestic animals, and the encroachment of invasive species, for example. Again, if the city wishes to defer the identification of the district hard courts to the future, we would be happy to oblige. However, we maintain this location is viable and the best outcome. Other matters raised in the officer's recommendation to not support the proposal include the lack of an access road adjacent to the mushroom farm to connect with the service commercial lots to the north of the sub-regional drain and the removal of the local centre in the centre of the precinct. In terms of the access road for the service commercial area, we appreciate the city's desire to ensure service vehicles do not traverse through the residential area where possible, and we support that. There is an existing easement along the boundary of the mushroom farm that could be acquired by the city for this purpose, or alternatively a separate road could be provided through the Western Power easement on either the western or eastern side. These options would provide for linear connection through to the road provided to the east of Costco. Alternatively, the local road proposed on the eastern side of the Western Power easement could be expanded to the north and connect with a future north-south road connection in the northern structure plan. This road is subject to future planning and is therefore somewhat uncertain. We are willing to work collaboratively with Aigle Royal and explore options with the WA Planning Commission and provide a north-south connection across the sub-regional drain if required as part of the next stage of the assessment process. In terms of the local centre, it's currently located just south of the primary school site. We undertook a retail sustainability analysis by Tactics 4 in 2023, which advised that the local centre was not expected to be commercially viable in the short or long term, and that residential amenity and services were accommodated via other planned supermarket-based centres within 1.5 kilometres of the site, particularly in proximity to Thomas Road and to the north of our structure plan. In response to this analysis, the amendment proposes the land is utilised, the former local centre land is utilised for residential purposes, which is appreciated to be a more viable option. Notwithstanding this, we would be happy to accommodate the city's views and maintain the local centre. In conclusion, we appreciate the Council's consideration of the points outlined and look forward to continuing to work closely with the City's officers through the Planning Commission's assessment of the amendment. We do appreciate the challenges to plan for future urban development in this area and maintain the position that the proposed design is the best outcome that balances the need to provide for housing, significant infrastructure and maintain environmental values, amongst other things. If the City considers a better outcome is to defer the planning of the land to a later stage, we would happy to consider this outcome on the basis that the amendment to the north-south connector is able to be progressed. However, in the interest of providing for future housing supply and achieving an orderly and proper planning outcome, we hope the City is able to consider this amendment an enhanced outcome over the current approved structure plan. I do have with me some representatives from Taylor Burrell Barnett, our planning consultants, and between the three of us, we're happy to answer any questions councillors may have about the proposal. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lay. The second deputation is from Mr. Mark McEntee. If you'd like to come forward and state your name and your address.
Hello, my name is Mark McEntee and I am the owner of lots 2, 24 and 25 Orton Road, Casuarina. Mr. Mayor, councillors, that's who we are, and I'd like to thank Alf for talking so wonderfully about our land and putting so much time into it. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. We wish to speak about the proposed Casuarina Central Structure Plan Amendment. We are the owners of lots 2, 24 and 25 Orton Road, Casuarina. These parcels make up the majority of land proposed to be included within the Casuarina Central Structure Plan. We support the intent of the City's recommendation, being that a number of matters that need to be resolved prior to the adoption of the structure plan. We have been very disappointed with the lack of meaningful consultation from the applicant, which has resulted in poor outcomes with respect to our land. We are of the view that the district open space should be located adjacent and connected to the oval associated with the primary school. The extent of wetlands on our site needs to be examined further, as we believe that the true boundaries will be different from that proposed by the proposed amendment. We have no imminent plans to develop our land, and as such, the proposed road connection and district open space cannot be delivered. This is a fatal flaw for the structure plan as proposed. We would request that at this time you support the officers' recommendations and that the draft structure plan amendment be held pending the additional works and further discussions with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McEntee. We also have a third deputation from Chris Kennedy from Argyle Royal, who's unable to attend. Do I need to read this out? So Mr. Kennedy's unable to attend, so the CEO will read his submission on their behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Argyle Royal, the landowners and developers of the Casuarina North Precinct, have been working collaboratively with Satterley Property Group for several years to advance the planning framework for the northern and central Casuarina precincts. Our goal is to undertake a coordinated planning approach to facilitate integrated subdivision and development in the future and ultimately achieve enhanced outcomes on the ground for the benefit of future occupants. During the advertising period, Argyle Royal submitted our support for the city for the proposed amendment to the Casuarina Central Precinct Structure Plan, especially in respect to the revisions to the north-south connector proposed. This road has been co-designed and will be co-delivered by Argyle Royal and Satterley Property Group in the future if enabled. It's critical to facilitate future subdivision and development within the wider Casuarina area and provides a critical vehicle route for occupants across all precincts. We're disappointed that the city officers have recommended that the council not support the proposed amendment. Argyle Royal believes the amendment achieves a balanced, well-planned outcome within the broader context of the locality, providing certainty for stakeholders in the precinct and enables the progression of the next stages in the planning process. As the city is aware, Argyle Royal has been progressing an amendment to the structure plan over the Casuarina North Precinct, Structure Plan 2197, Casuarina East of Freeway, which will be submitted to the city for assessment in due course. In collaboration with Satterley, this amendment incorporates the context of the proposed central structure plan, amendment including the alignment of the north-south connector. Without a plan in place over the central precinct, the future remains highly uncertain. We encourage the council to reconsider the recommendation and support the proposed amendment, thereby providing certainty for stakeholders in the locality. Argyle Royal looks forward to continuing our collaborative efforts with Satterley, and we hope that through the subsequent stages of the planning process, the West Australian Planning Commission will recognise the significant community benefits enabled by this proposal and the positive design outcome it achieves. From Chris Kennedy, Director of Planning at Argyle Royal.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Did we move the minutes in the end? Yep. We did? Okay. Declaration of interest by councillors and city officers. Anyone would like to declare an interest? Declare they are interested. Requests for leave of absence. Councillor Kearney.
This is quite advanced, but I'd like the 6th of October to the 6th of November, inclusive.
Okay. Would someone like to move that way? Or any other leaves of absence? No? Someone move that way? Deputy Mayor, Councillor Rouse. Put to the vote. All in favour? Councillor Penny.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Nothing on item 10, nothing on item 11, nothing on item 12, 13, 14, council, excuse me, 15.1, proposed amendments to draft animal environment amenity local law. Mr. CEO, is there any additional information?
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Do councillors have any questions? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. I believe it's page 11 on the topic of birds. It states birds may not create a nuisance or unreasonable noise. In this context, what is the definition of unreasonable and who ultimately decides if something is unreasonable?
Through Mr. Mayor, I would have to take that one on notice for the environmental health. My understanding is that there are environmental noise limits, so anything would be measured against that, but this I think is a case of working with people in terms of what the noises are and how they can mitigate it.
Okay. But you can provide further information.
We can provide further information.
I do have another question,
Yep.
Your Worship. Sure. So also on the topic of birds in general, in regards to setbacks, there's call-outs in the document for 5 metres from a house on another lot and 9 metres from a house on another lot. Has the city done any investigation around understanding if this would mean residents currently would be compliant or non-compliant with the new provision, noting that there's currently no setback requirement in regards to that provision and houses are increasingly getting closer and closer to one another?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. We don't have details around that. These things are only raised when it becomes a nuisance with neighbours. So we don't have details as to whether there would be setback issues at this point in time.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Someone like to move that way? Say again? At the beginning or at the end?
So prior to moving, the purpose of this. Purpose and effect.
Okay, so I'm just being told I have to read something before we can move it. So I just need to I need to read the purpose and effects. So the purpose to protect the environment and the public health, safety and amenity within the district, and to repeal redundant local laws. Effect, to provide for the elimination of reduction of threats to the environment and public health, safety and amenity through A, the regulation of keeping of animals other than dogs and cats in terms of types, number and how and where they can be kept. B, prescribing minimum standards for the keeping of all animals. And C, prescribing requirements for owners and occupiers of land to manage activities to prevent crating and a nuisance, including vermin control, dust prevention, refuse control, light, smoke and odour emissions. To repeal redundant provisions of the certain City of Kwinana local laws. Would someone like to move that way? Moved, Deputy Mayor, seconded Councillor Sargent. Would either councillors like to speak on the item?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. To reiterate the words of Mr. CEO in relation to any issues that may arise in relation to these amendments, I do agree that it's on a case-by-case basis, and it still provides for an opportunity for the council to assess and mediate between any parties that are aggrieved with any provisions within this Act. Thank you.
Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mayor Feasey. In my discussions with council, I just want to commend the effort that it's taken, considering some of these laws were potentially 100 years old that we were previously operating on, and bringing everything into alignment. And again, any questions I have raised with the CEO prior to council meeting, they've been very clear that this is we will communicate with the ratepayer if an issue is raised. There is a fines list there, but the fines list is once communication has happened. So thank you for the city team to make this happen in such a way to make us more aligned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Would anyone like to speak against the item? Put the item to the vote. All in favour? Councillor Penny?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. Item 15.2, Council Policy Review. There's a number of policies that are being reviewed. Do councillors have any questions to start with? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple from my side. The first one was on page 101 around council policy, elected members' leave of absence. Maybe it's more of a seeking to understand. The policy states that leave requests from elected members should go to the CEO in the first instance rather than the mayor. So I guess it's just understanding why CEO instead of the mayor when the council ultimately approves the leave.
Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's just an administrative process. So it's just to administrate the leave. Those leave requests will still come through, ultimately through to council to then be recorded on the agenda.
Okay, cool. My next question, if that's all right.
Sure.
Page 96, the mobile food vendor. It notes that the designated trading areas to be established should be determined by the Chief Executive Officer rather than now going through council for adoption. Could elected members be informed on how the city will keep us informed of the changes to the designated trading areas, how they're performing, and what function does council then have to change those in the future?
through you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so this one here, as was described in the briefing session, is that we've identified some designated trading areas. There are some which have the ability to be expanded on a case-by-case basis, and that's why it's providing the flexibility to do that. Off the top of my head, since this has now just been raised, I think if we do make any changes to that, we would put that in an update brief and send that through to councillors to say that these designated changes have been done and for what period and how they then performed.
And I understand, I guess we are trialling some new sites as part of that.
It is a trial.
If I guess we do get complaints or other kind of concerns around particularly the new sites, would elected members then raise with yourself, and then that goes through a process?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Exactly. So you would just raise that as you would do any other questions that you have, and we would investigate it, then come back to you.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions? Councillor Penny, did you have any questions?
No, but I will speak to the motions when they get. We're not dealing with this en bloc, are we? We're looking at each policy separately.
I guess we're at the point of. Is there any other questions? Would you like to move something?
Oh, I just don't want. I want to look at the advocacy and lobbying policy separately.
Okay, so would you like to move that we deal with that one on its own?
Yes, thank you.
Would someone like to second that? Councillor Sargent, all in favour? Councillor Penny?
Aye.
Carried. So we'll deal with the advocacy and lobbying item first. So would you like to clearly, you're obviously moving that, would you like to speak on the item, Councillor Penny?
I'd like to speak against the item. So do I speak first or do I?
Sorry, then sorry, it's very difficult with the fact that you're not in the room.
Apologies, yeah.
Sorry.
You've got to have a motion first.
Okay, so we don't have. So you can't move the motion as it is because you're against the motion. So we need someone to move the motion as it is. Moves Councillor Acker. Seconded. Deputy Mayor. Would Councillor Acker like to speak on the item? Deputy Mayor? Would anyone like to speak against the item?
Yes, please.
Councillor Penny?
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the intent of this policy is to provide flexibility and responsiveness in terms of the city's advocacy positions. As it stands, this policy may be too flexible. The revised policy dissolves. You'll have to excuse me. I'm a bit unwell, so your patience is appreciated.
No problem.
The revised policy dissolves the Kwinana Future Priorities document, which would traditionally be adopted by council, and replaces it with 4 broad advocacy themes: development and tourism, healthy living, environment and sustainability, and commercial investment opportunities. And this new policy states that these priorities, that advocacy positions will be generally aligned with these broad themes. The new policy removes the requirement of advocacy positions to be identified and adopted by council, and it also removes the policy link between the strategic community plan and our advocacy positions. And why this is an important point is the strategic community plan informs the city and council of the community's desires and priorities. It's a really key link for us to understand what opportunities local people see for themselves and where we should be placing our advocacy intentions. I understand that the city administration intends to provide elected members with a separate document that will outline advocacy positions as they change and come up. If so, this should be reflected in that policy because it is a really key document. And as I said, it may be a step away from what the Kwinana Futures priority document was, but there still needs to be some reflection of how strategic priorities are identified and ranked and reported on. I believe the city could still achieve a really strategic stance and a responsive approach, as well as like providing some transparency and surety to the community and to elected members in terms of how advocacy positions are identified and ranked. And on that point, so I would encourage my fellow councillors to not to support the policy as it stands, but you know, is this the point where I foreshadow a motion? Apologies.
You could foreshadow a motion if the motion was lost.
Yeah. So if this motion is lost, I foreshadow that we instruct the CEO to revise this policy and look at ways, to revisit this policy in consultation with the elected members to see if we can get some more robust frameworks that will achieve what the administration needs to achieve, as well as providing maximum community input and transparency. Thank you.
So in a nutshell, you'd like your foreshadowed motion is to defer the item to a workshop, just for
Beautiful, thank you.
Simplicity.
Thank you, thank you.
The CEO will actually respond to your.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, councillors, as was discussed at the briefing, the intent with the policy is to, at a high level, identify how we go about undertaking advocacy. The strategic advocacy framework that we had, which was developed a couple of years ago, was a document that never really got used, and it just sat on our website. It wasn't referred to, wasn't really updated. And what occurred over the last couple of years, as has been the approach now within WA around advocacy, is a lot more discussions with council identifying what those advocacy priorities are, and then running with those, and then obviously feeding back how we're performing of them. In the draft policy, the themes does identify what those key themes are, and then it also identifies that the themes will be presented to councillors for comment. So this is specifically the actions that will then sit underneath it. So for instance, the Kwinana Loop Trail, the Child Adolescents Health Hub, those things will be identified and what the key actions are within them and how we're progressing. That will sit within your big tin can, and we will update that regularly and then have conversations with you. Advocacy is a thing which, yes, it aligns with the strategic community plan, but advocacy also occurs when opportunities, issues are identified, and those opportunities are within a short space of time. So for instance, the ArcLight program was an initiative that came up within a very short space of time, and we were able to secure funding for that really important initiative quite quickly. So the policy is really providing that overarching framework for how we do it, and then you'll have a document that will then identify what those key actions are with you, and we will have regular discussions with you how we update that.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. So we have had two movers, against. Do we have anyone speak for the existing policy? Councillor Rouse.
Yes, thank you, Worship. As outlined, the intent of this policy is to be flexible and fluid and somewhat, enabling the Mayor and CEO to take advocacy actions as guided by Council, and also to be able to present advocacy at short notice when the need may be. So this may be hampered somewhat if those advocacy positions have to be referred back to Council. Thank you.
Anyone else speak against? No. Who moved it? Councillor Acker, would like to make any closing remarks?
Oh, can I make closing remarks?
Sorry, only the mover can close.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I think as councillors we need to be careful not to hamstring the CEO and the mayor when they're advocating on behalf of the city. And I'm a bit hesitant to delay getting this as policy for the city. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Acker. I'll put the item to the vote. All in favour? Against? Councillor
Aye.
Penny?
Against.
Motion carried. If we just deal with the remaining items, remaining policies, which is the mobile food vendors, the fraud and corruption, and the addition of the elected members' leave of absence. Does anyone have any questions in relation to any of those policies? Someone like to move? Moved on block, Deputy Mayor, seconded Councillor Sargent. Deputy Mayor, speak on the item.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'd like to acknowledge the staff and the team for constantly reviewing and updating our policies to make sure that they're relevant to the dynamics of our community and being able to respond in a manner that gets it to council to make a decision in a timely manner with a framework that is supported for them to be able to do their work and not impede them on making decisions in this chamber. Thank you.
Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mayor Feasy. I just want to say, especially with the initiative with the fraud and corruption policy, the city staff's dedication to transparency and accountability to the community, I highly commend you for taking a step to create this policy and the fantastic level that it's been complied at. Thank you.
Would anyone like to speak against? I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? Councillor Penny?
Aye.
Against? Motion carried. There's nothing on item 16. Item 17.1, Wellard Residential Local Structure Plan Amendment 1, Lot 506 Johnson Road, Wellard. Consideration of submissions and recommendations to the WAPC. Is there any
Point of
additional-
order. Point of order.
Yes, Councillor Penny?
Can I please be excused from the meeting
No problem. Do we need to
as I'm unwell? Thank you very much.
So, just noted in the minutes that Councillor Penny departed the meeting at 6:15. Or is that
Due to health reasons. Thank you.
no problem?
Thanks.
Get well. Is there any additional information? No? Does council have any questions in relation to this planning item? Would someone like to move that way? Don't all move at once. Moved, Councillor Acker, seconded Councillor Rouse. Would either councillors like to speak on the item? Would anyone like to speak against? Put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. It's good we finally probably filled the last piece of the puzzle in that particular subdivision area. Item 17.2, Casuarina Central Precinct Structure Plan Amendment, consideration of submissions and recommendations to the WAPC. Is there any additional information?
We'll take the report as read, and if there's any questions.
Do council have any questions? Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got a question around the community engagement as part of this item. I think it's page 804, where it states, following public interest, a public meeting was held on the 12th of February at Casuarina Wellard Community Hall, where approximately 60 people attended. Could the city please summarise the feedback and sentiment of that particular event, noting that of the 60 attendees, not all formally provided submissions? I think it would be good for the elected members and those listening at home or in the chamber to understand this community engagement exercise a bit more, particularly as it relates to those individuals that attended in person.
Over to the planning manager.
Thank you, through the Mayor. The community engagement event was on this particular proposal, but it was also a number of letters had been sent out to residents within Wandie, excuse me, regarding Casuarina, regarding what their obligations are as landowners in terms of clearing bush or trees and things like that and development things. So that we held a joint community engagement event, and I think most of the people that attended were actually in response to those letters that were sent to the individual landowners. Most of the questions that we received were focused on that, what can and can't do on our properties, more so than the proposed amendment to the Casuarina structure plan. So I think that's probably reflected in the low number of public submissions that we received on the structure plan amendment.
Any additional questions, Councillor Brown? Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Acker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In Mr. Lay's deputation, he talked about that there's a lot that could be acquired by the city for the purpose of a road for commercial traffic. Could somebody just clarify that for me from a city's perspective, please?
Manager Planning?
Through the mayor, I think the lot that Mr. Lay was referring to is a easement that's adjoining the mushroom farm on Orton Road. We haven't looked into that proposal or that issue as to whether that's a feasible option, what the process would be, or any of those sorts of things at this stage. That's the first I've sort of heard of that as an option or an idea.
Any other questions? I have a question. In relation to the land, so we've obviously received a number of submissions. A submission from the landowners in relation to the subject land who are not supportive of the plan, obviously as are the city officers. Where does that leave the landowner in relation to, or where does that leave the development if a significant entry to the land to the south would require development for that to occur if those particular owners of their land were not willing to actually participate in the process?
Well, essentially, I suppose the central area of Casuarina, there is still road access. It's a little bit convoluted, so that access could be explored as to whether it's feasible to develop that central cell. But I think, as Mr. Lay noted and the city's noted in the report, it would be preferred that there is a central road alignment through the central cell and linking with the north. Unfortunately, what's being proposed, there's a number of issues that we feel have not been adequately addressed, including the participation of the affected landowners and particularly the mapping of the wetland area. Those issues we feel are fundamental to this amendment and need to be addressed to unlock the proposal that's on the table. But in terms of whether the central area can be developed right now, I think there is road access, so it could hypothetically that could occur, but it would be quite unusual. And what is proposed, or a connection north-south to the existing Casuarina North development, is preferred, and we agree with that.
So, secondary question. So, in the instance where WAPC approves the amendment, which would redo that land, at what point and what authority does anyone have to actually force the landowners into actually doing something about it in relation to the proposed plan over their land?
So that plan would become the statutory document, I suppose, over that person's land, and when they come to develop, if they want to develop, they would have to develop in accordance with that plan. There's nothing that forces someone to develop. So if that landowner sits on it and doesn't do anything, well, then the plan is effectively can't be implemented.
So then where would that leave the requirement for the hard courts to go into that section of Casuarina if that landowner wasn't willing to develop, but there's a requirement to put those hard courts in somewhere? Where does that leave the situation?
Well, that's comes to the suppose, crux of the city's concern with the amendment as it's proposed. There is that uncertainty in terms of these key landowners are not a party to what's being proposed, and they've even further provided an objection to what is proposed. So at the moment, there's a high degree of uncertainty that the plan can be delivered as proposed, including the city's district hard courts and that road connection.
Okay, I mean, that would be my concern, in that the current need for those outdoor courts is actually quite high, so if there's no certainty, that certainly would be a concern. Do council have any other questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks you, Mr. Lay, for coming for his presentation on behalf of Satterley. And once again, thank Mr. McCanty for coming presenting their position. I know that there were aspects of support and non-support from the council's position in relation to the motion, but I think the key element that Mr. McCanty was alluding to was that the inability for Satterley to negotiate and consult in a proper manner in a timely period. Mr. Lay said today that they were in a position to be able to negotiate that further if there was an opportunity to either delay or respond or look at amending and putting a future proposal. Would that be a position that the officers would consider if that were to be something down the track if we didn't accept this motion tonight?
Through the Mayor, the city's always willing to work with the proponents to get to an agreed position on these matters. Statutorily, the city is required to provide a report to the WAPC by the 28th of May, unless that time frame is agreed to with the Commission and the proponent. I think there's still some fundamental issues that will take time to unpack, particularly the mapping and delineation of the wetland over lot 25 and 24. So the deferral period could be quite lengthy. If the application or the proposal proceeds to the Commission will need to, or the Department of Planning will need to look into these issues further, and will engage with the city and the proponents and everyone else to try and find an agreed solution. So I suppose in short, unless the proponent's willing to defer it and advise the Commission that they don't want a decision imminently, I think the council should make a decision tonight and move forward with it.
Any other questions? So basically, if the item is we resolve to support the officer's recommendations, it goes over to the WAPC to decide from there on in. Would based on the information that we're asking, would there be a requirement for it to come back to council if they agreed with us? Or
no.
if the proponent ticked off the boxes that we've suggested, or ultimately whatever the WAPC decides?
No, it would not come back to council. No, the Commission can make a decision either to approve it, require modifications before it is approved, or to refuse it. Or that process doesn't require another council decision.
So if it was refused, would it come back to council? Would it be a new application, or would this be refused based on X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, if it was refused, the proponent that option would be to prepare a new application, a new proposal, and lodge it, and we would go through this same process again.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mayor Feasy. Through the chair, so what does that mean for the ratepayer, the owner of that property that is currently against it, if the council, I'm going to get the acronym, WAPAC, chooses to, if we said no but they said yes, does that mean that that particular gentleman that's come and spoken tonight, his land is locked into this agreement that he hasn't been agreeable to, I guess, with the consultation process? Sorry.
Through the Mayor, yes, well, that the adopted approved plan will become what that landowner can or can't develop. So in the instance of lot 24 and 25, the proposed plan shows a portion of road running through lot 24 and the rest of it as district hard courts, public open space, and the wetland area. That's so there's no development potential there essentially. The hard courts is a developer contribution item though, that the city at some point will need to acquire land for that, and if the plan shows that land to be there, that's the land that the city would then acquire through the developer contribution funds. So there's some, I suppose, monetary. It doesn't mean that there's no sort of value in the land. The value would be at the market rate for the city to acquire that land for the hard courts. But in terms of can they develop, yeah, there's not really any development potential there for those two lots.
So ultimately, if the WAPC approve the amendment, and they decide to put that's where the hard courts are going to go, that ultimately then the city would need to go down the path of compulsory requisition of the land to actually ensure that the hard courts go there.
Yeah, that's right. As it stands right now, ideally, what would happen is that landowner would join somehow with either Satterley or some other developers in the area and look to seek to develop jointly some land, and then we wouldn't need to do the acquisition. But if that doesn't occur and the city's, I suppose, timing through the expenditure of the contribution funds and all that sort of thing plays out that we require that land to build the facility, we'd have to consider an acquisition process.
Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Sargent?
Thank you, Mayor Feasy. Two-pronged. One, the environmental concerns, especially with that buffer where the proponent's talking about 30 metres instead of the 50 metres. What happens, so if this approval, even if we say no and WAPAC says yes, and then it turns out that that is, once the environmental study is done, that's a high conservation site because that information's not been provided correctly at this time, is there any recourse for, I guess, the landowner or the city to challenge that if the study is done in a high conservation side of it? That's question one.
Through the mayor, what the amendment is proposing is that it's suggesting that a 30-metre buffer is appropriate based on some earlier decisions and based on a certain set data, a certain mapping data set. What the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions and the city are saying is that data set isn't consistent with this sort of established data set, and that the determination of whether it should be a 30 or 50 metre buffer needs to be supported by flora and fauna survey work. The amendment is saying that at least at a desktop level that there's enough information to move forward, and that detailed work would occur through subdivision approval processes, which can happen. It's not unusual. But in terms of whether, if the structure plan was approved and then the land looked to go to be developed, and then a subdivision approval process, that detailed mapping could occur. All this, I suppose, is still contingent on the agreement and support involvement of those affected landowners. So that uncertainty is still there. In terms of whether the city has any, I suppose, recourse or right of review of a WAPC decision in this instance, the answer is no.
Nothing further? Someone like to move the recommendation? Move, Deputy Mayor. Seconded, Councillor Rouse. Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak?
Nothing further, Your Worship.
Councillor Rouse.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's a fairly detailed question time, so I'll keep this brief. The motion, of course, is not to support the amendment of the Casuarina Central Precinct Structure Plan. The officer's reasons are outlined in item 1 of the motion, and they're also detailed in the officer report with the 14 key matters identified and addressed. Mr. Lay says that this may indeed be an enhanced outcome, and it may very well be. However, to approve the amendment at this time without having due regard to the extent of the resource enhancement wetland, the proper flora and fauna and black cockatoo habitat surveys, in regards to the city's local commercial activities centre strategy, and the fact that the proponent does not own any of the land in the expansion area, combined with the uncertainty of the proponents or that of the city's ability to acquire the land or the landowner agreeing to develop, in my opinion, would be a detriment to the orderly and proper planning of the Casuarina Precinct Structure Plan as a whole, and so will therefore be voting in favour of the motion not to support. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Would anyone like to speak against? No? I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. Item 17.3, direction for future of the City Administration Building. Is there any additional information, Mr. CEO?
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Council have any questions? No? Would someone like to move that way? Move to Councillor Rouse. Second Deputy Mayor. Would either councillors like to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. It is clear that all the it is clear to all that work here or visit here that our administration building is extremely outdated and in need of a complete overhaul. The comfort and productivity of our city offices is compromised with the ad hoc layout, and the cost to continually apply band-aid solutions to continue operations is disruptive and costly. Staff turnover in local government is very high, and staff retention is difficult if you do not provide an attractive work environment. Our city offices are held in high regard, and we have one of the best, if not the best, overall workforces in local government. And for our city to continually attract and retain the best, we need to offer the workplace where they can do their best. To me, option 1, a new facility would be the best scenario for the city. The architect's designs are impressive and would not only provide a modern, efficient working environment, but would also create a state-of-the-art civic precinct, which would benefit staff, residents, improve the perception of the city of Kwinana into the future. However, to commit to such a rebuild would be very disruptive to the city's operations, and the costs associated with the project as a whole would not pass the pub test among ratepayers in this current financial environment. Therefore, we need to compromise, and that compromise is option 2, which is refurbish our existing civic and administration building. This will provide a new like environment for our city staff and visitors. It will provide a comfortable and productive workplace for our staff, where amenities are actually functioning properly and teams can work cohesively together and not be scattered throughout the premises. While the cost to do so is still significant, a majority of these costs will be somewhat recouped by the savings over time from not having to continually repair and replace ageing infrastructure. The refurbishment probably should have happened years ago, and now the city cannot afford to wait any longer. Therefore, due to the benefit to our staff, the benefit to our residents, and the benefit to the reputation of the city, I fully support the refurbishment of the City of Kwinana Administration Building. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. You were the seconder. Anyone would like to speak again? Did you have a question, Councillor Brown?
Sorry, I was a bit preempting. I'm the next one.
Oh, you would like to speak against? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. So to be clear, I'm speaking to the point of the discussion item to remove the council chamber as a permanent construct and potentially from these premises altogether. The report notes the interest in turning these council chambers into a temporary construct, creating a permanently multi-purpose space with no references to the democratic process, and the potential to remove the chambers from this building altogether and instead using this area in the future to accommodate staff. I strongly feel the significance of this cannot be understated. The significance of removing the permanent function of the council chambers cannot be understated. The removal of the physical reminder, the physical function of the democratic process, and the representation of residents in decision-making, I feel, is a mistake. When council meetings are not in session, this is not an empty room. This council chamber is not a waste of space. This room is a physical reminder of the fact that every single decision, every single action that the city does should be in the interest of our residents. I feel that the removal of the council chamber as a permanent construct is the removal of that symbolic representation on a day-to-day basis. It, some would say, puts democracy in the back seat. It's saying that democracy is something that can be packed away, out of sight, out of mind. These concerns have been expressed and discussed ahead of this meeting, and I don't feel the report or the discussion item considered this evening addresses these concerns, and I'll continue to advocate on behalf of residents on this matter moving forward. I strongly feel their voice and their representation matters in all of its forms, including this physical space here. I am in favour of the act of a refurbishment, but I want to make clear that I'm not in favour of the discussion in the report which describes the removal of the council chamber as a permanent construct. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak for?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yes, you can speak. Yeah, because you seconded and you
Thank
didn't
you, Your
speak.
I have no doubt that the current council chambers we have served its purpose and has gone beyond its lifespan. For the time that it was built, it was architecturally an innovation, and the ingenuity around building this structure at the time was ahead of its time. It is, however, come to the point now where it has become to areas where there is disrepair that is constantly maintaining and eating into the budget, and being able to have an opportunity to provide an up-to-date, more modern workplace for our employees in light of the recent elevation of culture and the staff and the way that we reenact and the engagement that we have with the members and the community. I support the motion and agree with Councillor Rouse in his recommendation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I will note, based on Councillor Brown's comments, that I guess this motion is just to instruct the CEO to start the process. By no means is there any design or any particular way about doing that refurbishment has been agreed to. So I do concur with your comments in relation to the removal of the council chamber and the significance or that it does provide to the community. But ultimately, we can discuss that further at the process of the design. We have established that we won't be choosing the colour of the curtains, but we certainly can have some say in where and how things are operated. So based on that, I'll put the item to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. I think it's a significant step forward for the city to refurb this building as opposed to spend quite I think it was $30 or so million to rebuild. It certainly will mean, I think in the future, much more effective workforce as outlined by Councillor Rouse, his pre-prepared statement. So I'm sure the staff will look forward to the refurb building, and a number of people will look forward to the departure of the red bricks. I believe we will keep some feature red brick just so people don't miss them. Item 17.5, draft local planning structure 2024 to... So I don't have that on my agenda. The public agenda, that's not there. Okay. What is the, can you just move up so I can see what the, what it is? It's item 17.4, proposed road names for the Wellard Village Stage 49. Councillors have any questions? Councillor Sargent, you didn't pick that up when you did the red pen through the...
It's on mine.
No questions? Would someone like to move that way? Moved Councillor Rouse, seconded Councillor Acker. Anyone speak against? All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, 17.5, draft local planning structure 24 to 2036. Consideration of submissions and recommendations to the WAPC. Is there any additional information? Councillors have any questions? Someone like to move that way? Councillor Brown?
So my question Do I have a page number 900? Okay. So my question wasn't related to the planning to take place around the presence of automated or self-driving vehicles on the road, which is mentioned in the item. It's quite a pointed question. It mentions that there will be considerations over 15 years around this space. My question is kind of what's on the short-term horizon, noting that the timeline for self-driving or autonomous vehicles is in some areas measured in months away, not years anymore. Are there considerations around this for kind of the design of infrastructure, road markings, particular pick-up, drop-off areas that are mentioned in some areas of that report? And I also note that I guess there's regularly vehicles in the parking lot of this facility right now that with the semi-autonomous features, and if you listen to the claims of the vendors or those auto manufacturers, that full self-driving capability on those vehicles could technically be turned on overnight, so not 15 years away, but the short-term horizon.
Through you, Mayor, predominantly outside of the planning strategy, we would take the lead from the state government in this space, and earlier I responded to a question about line marking. Line marking is normally provided by the state government through main roads, and if there was a need for line marking to support autonomous vehicles, I would expect it to be funded through the state government and there'd be a rollout program. I would also expect that perhaps 15 years, but local roads would be last. The focus would be the freeway and the major highways rather than the local roads. I think in local roads we would be more relying on autonomous braking for safety rather than the auto driving.
Just a follow-up question. I think it mentions a few spots in this item around the decrease in parking spaces that are required due to the autonomous nature of vehicles in the future. Could you talk to that item?
Through the Mayor, it's something that we'll consider further. So action number 29 from the local planning strategy is to review the planning requirements around the provision of parking, transport, access, egress, etc. in new development, and that includes sort of adapting and building in mechanisms or provisions that we can adapt to changing transport behaviours and things like that. So, as I'm sure you can appreciate, it's a sort of rapidly evolving space, but there's certainly an action identified in the strategy that this is a further piece of work that we'll need to dive into for the planning requirements for new building.
Anything else, Councillor Brown? Councillor Sargent?
Thank you, Mayor Feasy. If I quote page 963, in my previous conversations with the CEO prior to today, when you go through the list of submissions, specifically Thomas, Christina, Julie, Chris, Alicia, Francesca, Ian, Lucy, Darren, Nicole, Lionel and Leanne, have all to a degree submitted around their concerns, and I was hoping you could speak to the wordings on sorry, I'll just make sure I quote landowners have non-conforming land use rights. If we could please extend on that a little bit just for the large impact of ratepayers' concerns, please.
Sure, through the Mayor. I'll read out the response we provided earlier, if that's okay. So the submissions state that they have land interest in the Improvement Plan 47 area, which is broadly sort of Mandogalup. That land is currently zoned rural under the Metropolitan Region scheme. However, upon the gazettal of the IP47 scheme, the land will be zoned and reserved for different purposes, including industrial, service, commercial. Zoning of the land is a primary planning control and obviously brings about certain restrictions on the land. A change to a property zoning does not affect a person's ability to continue using that property for what it's been previously approved for, even if the new zoning means the existing use could not be approved. This right's referred to as a non-conforming use right, and that's what's that terminology is being referred to in or used in the schedule of submissions. So, for example, within the IP47 scheme area, residential land uses which are currently permitted within a rural zone may become non-conforming if that zoning is changed to industrial, as residential land use is not permitted within an industrial zone. However, as the uses have been previously approved, they can continue to operate or be used despite the non-conforming nature of or imposed by the industrial zone. So minor development may be considered acceptable. However, if you were to propose a new dwelling in that industrial zone, it would not be permitted.
Thank you. It's just giving some certainty to the ratepayers. Otherwise, fantastic work on this document. Thank you.
You've thought of another question, Councillor Brown?
Sorry, I scrolled a bit further and realised I had one more. So there's a consistent theme around the diversity of housing stock in this item. I guess there's a perception amongst our residents that lots in new developments, or just in general, are getting smaller and smaller. Could the city talk to how this item kind of looks to maintain the diversity of housing stock in the city, and particularly around how, I guess, that caters to allowing a resident to, I guess, go on their whole life journey in the city of upsizing, downsizing, and not having to leave the city of Kwinana to do that?
Through the Mayor, the strategy doesn't at the moment identify areas to be up-coded, like changes in density coding, but it does have some actions around looking at areas where that may be appropriate, for example, around our activity centres or through the local structure planning process. Providing a diversity of housing is primarily done through your density controls, which, whilst the state government has set some targets for new areas and for infill areas, within that there's scope for the city to, I suppose, look at the local context and adapt what density should be provided there. So housing diversity will be primarily driven or encouraged through different densities that will be delivered as part of the new planning scheme, which will follow approval of this document.
Nothing else? No other questions? Would someone like to move the item? Moved, Councillor Sargent. Seconded, Councillor Acker. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mayor Feasy. I just want to say this document probably had one of the largest numbers of submissions I've seen attached to a council document, and I really appreciate the city staff's effort for a really clear answer towards those submissions, and that so many members of the community were engaged in this. This is a very in-depth, high-level document that's talking about safeguarding Kwinana for our future generations. So go team, really, for making this happen. And for the names that I mentioned earlier, know that there are further processes and that you do have that safety of knowing that your house is still your house, which to me resonated as a concern, as if it was my house and it was rezoned, how would I feel? So thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Acker? Would anyone like to speak against? I'll put to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. I would like to just congratulate Mrs. Cook and Brett and the planning team on getting to this point of the draft of the local planning strategy. I think it's 7 years in the making, and it's a little step closer to a new planning scheme. So congratulations to all involved, and it was certainly a lot of work. 18.1, the May budget review. Is there any additional information?
Nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
No? Council, have any questions? Someone like to move that way? Moved, Deputy Mayor, seconded, Councillor Kearney. Anyone like to speak? Speak against? Put to the vote, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Lay. Mr. K. 18.2, monthly financial report, April 2024. Is there any additional information?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Really just, I think the one thing to highlight in this report, councillors, which you've probably already picked up, is the change to our investment process. So the city is no longer investing in any activities which are linked to fossil fuel. So they are fossil fuel free investments. So it's taking more of that ethically sustainable approach.
Any questions? Someone like to move that way? Moved, Councillor Sargent, seconded, Councillor Acker. Would either councillor like to speak? Speak against? Put it to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. 18.3, so we're almost there. 18.3, accounts for payment for the month ended 30 April 2024. Is there any additional information? Does councillors have any questions? Councillor Acker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 1263, just going, I didn't go through every item. I just went through the big ticket items. Creditor number 12459, Flight Centre, $80,000 in airfares. I believe that's for the Perth Southwest Metro Alliance Board and Alliance staff. I didn't think the city was paying for that from a previous briefing. Can somebody elaborate, please?
Mr. CEO.
With pleasure, Mr. Mayor. That is not, so we are merely acting as a payer of the expense for the Perth Southwest Metro Alliance. So a little bit of context here. The Perth Southwest Metro Alliance is a group of councils comprising East Fremantle, Melville, Coburn, Rockingham and the city of Kwinana. The administration of the Perth Southwest Metro Alliance is undertaken by a director who is employed by the Perth Southwest Metro Alliance. The director currently is considered to be a City of Kwinana employee, so providing the administration. It can move around on yearly basis, so at this stage it comes under us. So therefore we act as the administration for it, so we pay the accounts of various activities related to the Perth Southwest Metro Alliance, and then we get reimbursement from that.
Any other questions? Councillor Brown?
There is this one at the Australian USA Consulate where I'm witnessing and notarising documents, $76. So just wondering what that was.
I believe it's probably in relation to the same thing.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That is in relation to a application for a grant that the Perth Southwest Metro Alliance made to the US State Department for funding which required it to be notarised by a lawyer or some other person which was approved by the US State, and it happened to be the consulate.
Just wondering off the back of, I guess, some of these questions around kind of this alliance, if there's a way to kind of mark or designate these transactions kind of a bit separately in this report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, very difficult. It's a download out of the general ledger, so it's very difficult to identify Perth Southwest items.
Okay. Thank you.
And sorry, just in relation to the transaction that Councillor Acker did ask about, I believe that the Perth Southwest Metropolitan Alliance will be issuing a media release in relation to the purpose of that expenditure. Okay. Would someone like to move? Move, Deputy Mayor, seconded Councillor Sargent. Would either councillors like to speak? Anyone speak against? Put to the vote, all in favour? Against? Carried. Where are we going to slot that in?
Notices of motion.
Notice of motion of which previous notice has been given. I believe that Councillor Sargent has a notice of motion. Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mayor Feasy. I move that the council resolve to 1. Make a public statement that the City of Kwinana takes a stand against family violence in any form, and the City of Kwinana as an organisation says no to violence. Point 2, to advocate to the state government to provide additional funding for family violence services within Kwinana. Do I now speak to my reasoning? Sorry,
We
just-
need someone to second.
Oh, okay.
Would someone like to second? Second to Deputy Mayor. Would someone like to speak on the item?
Yes,
Councillor
please.
Sargent.
Thank you, Mayor Feasy. Okay, my fellow councillors, I stand here before you today asking for my first notice of motion to advocate for our community. I have, but basically the nation is in crisis with violence in all across Australia as well as our community. It's not just an our community issue, but after speaking to local police, our call-outs are, a high number of them are related to family and domestic violence and violence in general in our community, or mental health concerns. I would like to ask that we advocate at a higher level to say that violence is not okay. I aim to hope by moving this motion that we could get to a point where we can say that instead of a victim living in fear in the City of Kwinana, a perpetrator lives in fear in the City of Kwinana, because they are going to be reported. If you hear your neighbour making violent acts, you're going to call the police, and this is not okay in any shape or form. And I would hope that we can all join together to make this statement and make our city a forefront city to say that this is not okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Would maybe Mr Fisher like to respond?
Through you, Mr Mayor. The administration had a look at this motion, and obviously we're in support of Councillor Sargent's motion. And we're aware that the reports of family violence is going up in Kwinana and probably across the state as well. And we've had reports from police that it takes up a majority of their time is kind of dealing with family violence cases. And I suppose the reports are going up, but that may be that there's an increase in family violence, but there's also an increase in reporting, which may seem as a negative, but it's also, and people are reporting more and getting more support, which is important. The city really take an approach here of facilitating and advocating, and that's really our role in this space. Obviously, we don't provide services, but we work together across the region. So the city's a part of the Rockingham Kwinana Safe Family Alliance, and that's through the City of Kwinana and City of Rockingham. And I think our role there is very much to facilitate solutions and then to advocate to state government for more services. And that network's had three key themes. Really to increase community awareness, and this motion today will really help that network increase that awareness across the community. Obviously also to engage with families that are experiencing violence, so people with lived experience, to kind of understand what their situation is and how we can better support that, and how do we get more services based in our community. And the third area of that network is to coordinate and advocate for increased local funding. So thank you to this motion that will really help that network to really push that forward. So in response, we're in support of the motion.
Who seconded? Deputy Mayor, would you like to speak for the item?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd firstly like to congratulate Councillor Sargent on the notice of motion. Family violence is a scourge that knows no boundaries. It affects individuals regardless of age, gender, socioeconomic status or cultural background, and it leaves deep scars, physical, emotional and psychological, on victims and witnesses alike. It tears at the very fabric of our community and our society, and often in silence, behind closed doors. In Kwinana, we pride ourselves on being a close-knit community and supportive community, and advocating as a collective, as a responsible to ensure that every member of our community feels safe, valued and protected. This can only be achieved if we continue to educate and advocate and confront the family violence head-on. And as a council, we are standing with that position and with determination and compassion. Advocacy and education is the tool we have to fight this scourge. We must continue to educate ourselves about the signs of family violence and the ways in which we can help those affected, including understanding that family violence is not limited to physical abuse. It also encompasses emotional, psychological, financial and sexual abuse. And we also, of late, been aware of coercive powers in relation to these acts of violence. We need to recognise these and support those so that we can support and advocate and save the lives of vulnerable people in our community. So each one of us has a role to play. I, like Councillor Sargent, we have grassroots community organisations on the ground in this community, and we take pride in being able to leverage relationships with our officers and the City of Kwinana in respect to the safety and wellbeing of our community. It's an honour to be here to support the notice of motion from Councillor Sargent, and we should all pledge to stand against family violence and let us commit to being the change we wish to see in our community together. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Would anyone like to speak against the item? I will put to the vote. All in favour? Against? Carried. And in doing so, I'll read a statement on behalf of the City. This motion signifies a firm stance by the City of Kwinana against family violence and outlines our commitment to fostering a safer community. Local police reports indicate an increase in family violence incidents, highlighting the urgent need for collective action. By making a public statement, we are declaring that violence in any form is unacceptable in our community, and as a council, we are committed to working together with the state government, local services and community members to address family violence. Resources play a vital role in combating family violence, and as such, the City will be advocating to the state government for additional funding to enhance the capacity of local services to support victims and survivors, provide preventative education and develop effective intervention strategies. This funding will be used to complement the actions of the City that has already undertaken, including being a proactive participant in the Rockingham Kwinana Safe Family Alliance, which is dedicated to preventing domestic and family violence through initiatives such as White Ribbon Day and the 16 Days in WA campaign. The City has also joined forces with the City of Rockingham and other local governments to host 40 family and domestic violence workshops. The pilot project, delivered by Anglicare and funded by the state government, aimed at building awareness and skills to combat family and domestic violence across our communities. With wait list times for support services increasing and the levels of violence escalating both nationally and within our community, the passing of this motion sends a powerful message that the City of Kwinana stands united against family violence and is dedicated to advocating for the necessary resources to support our community. Together we can make Kwinana a safer and more supportive place for all. Thank you. Point of order. There is nothing on item 20. Is there any late or urgent business? Reports of elected members. Just remembering you don't have to say the little spiel. Just. Councillor Acker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completed all those duties required of me. I also had the pleasure of walking in the Lift the Lid on Mental Health walk a couple Sundays ago, along with some of my fellow councillors. Bit of a special day. I'm going to try not to get emotional. Bit of a special day for myself and my family, as my daughter is severely impacted with mental health illness. But while we were there, I saw a young man I recognized. His name's Josh Carr. I coached Josh in footy about 12 years ago. He's autistic. He's the only kid I ever coached that never touched the football. but he was happy to take his place, play footy for a year with his classmates. And I saw Josh, and I had a bit of a chat to him. Josh is now has a job. He's putting the wood in the machine. I'm not sure quite what that means, but it was a pleasure to see him. Josh taught me a lot about myself 12 years ago, and I'm quite happy he's doing well in the world today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Acker. Councillor Michael James Brown, do we need to put the hourglass?
No, never. Thank you, Your Worship. So, since the last ordinary council meeting, it was a while back, so on Thursday the 25th of April I joined fellow elected members at the dawn and mid-morning Anzac Day services at the Kwinana War Memorial, hosted by the RSL Kwinana Sub-Branch. Then on the 29th of April, I joined Councillor Rouse, Councillor Sargent, and then Councillor Penny as a guest as well at the Small Business Support Grants panel meeting. The 1st of May was the Mayor's Sundowner at Coolini Arts Centre. And then the 3rd of May I attended the latest Coburn Sound Management Council meeting, this time held at the HMAS Stirling. So just a little further on that meeting, here we received an update on the WAMSI Westport Marine Science Program, and it was noted by Dr. Kendrick that the program has begun publishing some of the final reports from that science initiative. So for those who are interested in viewing these reports, you can visit the research themes and reports page on the WAMSI Coburn Sound page, and I'll put the URL in the minutes, or you can Google it as well. Members also received an update from the Australian Submarine Agency, particularly on the SRF West Priority Infrastructure Project, so that involves some of the Garden Island upgrades, which included the project progress, public consultation undertaken and future consultation initiatives, site investigation and studies, and matters related to 2 referrals under the Environment Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act of 1999 made for that project. Materials from the presentations at this session will be circulated with elected members and officers as they come through, while the Australian Submarine Agency is also publishing public-facing materials on its website around the latest progress, so check that out if you're interested. And as has previously been discussed, the Coburn Sound Management Council is committed to sharing communiques describing the events at each of these meetings. So communiques have now been published for the November and February meetings of the Coburn Sound Management Council, and they can be found at the Coburn Sound Management Council website, and I'll share that URL as well. The communique for the May meeting has been drafted, and the coordinator will notify members when it is published and available. And lastly, on the 5th of May, I also joined some fellow elected members at the Lift the Lid on mental health walk, but I'll leave us with the comments from Councillor Acker on that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Kearney.
Okay, I was just going to make some reports on the senior sit. So we're off and going with the strategic plan workshop, which was run by Rick Smith from Elite Business Performance. So working with that, we had working on the Seniors Ambassador program, which has gone out for expression of interest, and we've apparently had some great responses. Senior Sits have engaged Green Brisker to do lunch every second Sunday. It's $20 a head, and you need to book in. Also, we had the free lunch, which was held yesterday, which the seniors themselves made the food. The money come from Newgen, which was thanks to Councillor Sargent and Frank Konechny, yes, and Newgen specifically. We had 60 local people attend the lunch, so it was a great day. And the AGM is on Monday the 28th of May. That's all for me.
Councillor Rouse.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, on Thursday the 25th of April, and other councillors attended the Anzac Day service at the Medina War Memorial. I think it was probably the biggest crowd that I've seen in my time living here in Kwinana and attending Medina, and I'd just like to congratulate all that came out to pay our respects to those that have fallen. The Wednesday the 1st of May, I attended your Sundowner at the Carrilli Arts Centre, Mayor, and thank you very much for that invite. I enjoyed the evening. Thursday the 2nd of May, I attended online a Metro Outer Joint Development panel with Councillor Wood. That was to approve the South Anketel Neighbourhood Centre development, which is the one just north of on Thomas Road behind McDonald's and the petrol station there. On Wednesday the 8th, I attended along with yourself, Mayor, and the traffic engineers. We attended the Wellard Primary School to meet with the school's principal and the PNC President and Vice President to observe the horrendous traffic conditions that occurred during school pickup times and and we discussed solutions. And I'd like to thank the city officers and for their attendance. On Monday the 13th of May, I attended the final Bullamara Advisory Group meeting, which will now be progressed to become a consultative committee of council, with the first meeting being held on the 1st of July. I'd like to thank all those who have been involved with the Bullamara over the past 5 years, including past Mayor Carol Adams, members of Alcoa, other community members and other organisations that have provided valuable input that has paved the way in elevating this advisory group, and it's something that all in Kwinana should be proud of. On Tuesday the 21st May, I attended the National Volunteer Week, that was last night, speed volunteer matching session at the Ken Jackman Hall. Riveting event, and I'd like to thank all those organisations who attended, and I'd like to make special mention to Tanya Sander, I think it is, the Volunteer Centre Coordinator, for her efforts in organising the event. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Councillor Sargent, I think you're going to give Councillor Brown a run for his money.
I am pre-prepared today. Thank you, Mayor Feasy. Since the last council meeting, I attended the Community Industries Forum that was hosted by the Kwinana Industries Council. This was a very informative evening that demonstrated how our local industries are working together to build a solid local economy that is focused on best practices to ensure the safety and prosperity of Kwinana for future generations. BP Kwinana updated on the BP Energy Hub progress and is proud to report that over 90% of materials from the demolition works are being recycled. I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Ashiona updated on the progress of the waste to energy facility and wishes to encourage community education on the pre-operation steam blows that will be happening soon, as well as educating community on best waste practices. Fremantle Ports spoke to the works regarding the fire and the endeavours they are taking to maintain supply chains. Blue Phoenix educated the community on the versatility of the products they will be making from the residue from the waste to energy facility and the extensive safety testings they have done. I have also attended the Mayor's Sundowner and would like to make a special mention of Shane Jacobs, who delivered a moving welcome to country that resonated with so many present. I attended alongside Mayor Peter Feasy the Couple with a Cop event at the Kwinana Marketplace that gave local business stakeholders a great way to share circumstances and find ways to work together to find solutions alongside the City of Kwinana and the Kwinana Police. A shout out to Sinead, fantastic work as always there. And finally, I attended the National Volunteer Week event last night. I would like to thank the many members of our community that dedicate their time and energy to supporting so many great causes. Volunteers are truly special, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. As to the questions, there are nil. Mayoral announcements, there are unfortunately many. I won't cover them all. I, along with a number of councillors, attended the Anzac Day service in Medina. I will concur with Councillor Rouse's statement to say that I also believe that it probably was one of the largest dawn services that we've seen in Kwinana. It's always a difficult thing in the dark, but it certainly there wasn't a lot of room between us and the next group of crowd. So that was certainly a successful event for the Kwinana RSL. I attended the Chariot Festival at the Perth Bella Mirigan Temple in Mandogalup, and for any councillors that has an opportunity to attend the temple, you really should go there at some point. It was phenomenal. Myself and the Honourable Stephen Pratt, representing the Premier, were the only two there wearing a suit. We certainly stood out, but we were kind of carried through, almost literally. And I also do need to thank the city's Chief Financial Officer, who is also a member of the temple, who actually assisted me in the protocol of where I had to place my shoes. But it was a great event, very colourful. There was probably, I think, probably a couple of thousand people there. And the aim of the day is to tow this giant chariot, which is about a 3-storey wooden thing on wheels, around the building. There's no paving around the building, it's all sand. So there was probably 500 of us pulling these ropes. So it was it was a fantastic day. I thought I'd be there for half an hour, and we were there for about 3. So anyone has the opportunity to go there, certainly take the opportunity. I attended a meeting at the Town of Victoria Park, which was somewhat of a Metro Mayor's meeting, just an informal catch-up. But one of the things that was raised by many local governments was tree canopies within local governments, but also more specifically the shot hole borer. And I believe the CEO at some point will organise a presentation for council, because that particular issue is in the trees in Coburn, and the main tree that it affects is Moreton Bay figs or fig trees. So you can imagine the devastation that may create in Medina, especially if it comes to Kwinana. Sorry, I will actually have to say when it comes to Kwinana, because it's kind of an inevitable situation that we will have to deal with it at some point. And the city will provide a whole heap of information and education to the community in how to identify and manage and things like that. Along with the CEO, we met the new director of the Kwinana Industries Council, David Harrison, just to open dialogue and continue the great relationship that the city has had with KRC over the years. I attended my sundowner. Would have been awkward if I didn't. I also attended the 60th anniversary of the Kwinana Swimming Club and their awards night, and somehow between myself and the Premier we may have said that we might build a 50-metre Olympic-sized pool at some stage in the next 50 years. I'll just add that bit at the end. Along with a number of councillors, I also attended the Rotary Lift the Lid. Actually, I cut the ribbon for the Rotary Lift the Lid mental health walk. It was a great number of people there to support that event for Rotary. Along with Councillor Rouse, I also attended Wellard Primary School, and I must say I've been on council for close to 17 years, and the number one thing people call you about in the beginning of the year is parking and transport around primary schools. We are at term 2, and I've seen a lot of traffic around primary schools in my time, and I must say the current situation at Wellard Primary School is the worst I've seen when it comes to parents and their inability to navigate around a primary school. So hopefully the city's engineering team can come up with a solution. I think it may be difficult, but hopefully we can provide a safer way for the children of Wellard Primary to cross the road. What else did I do? Can't remember the date, it's all blended into one. I attended the Kwinana Senior Citizens Mother's Day morning tea, along with the president of the senior citizens and a number of his male friends. We served tea to the ladies that attended the morning tea, which was quite a delightful event, to be quite honest, apart from the fact that the teapots that everyone brought in most of them were decorative teapots that were not really designed to pour tea, and I almost ended up with 3rd-degree burns, along with a number of ladies where I was unable to actually pour the tea. We got there in the end. Probably the best thing I did for the entire month was I went to wish someone a happy birthday. I attended the Banksia Village, I think it was about the 10th of May, to wish Nobby a happy 101st birthday. Nobby's lived at Banksia Park for, I think, 25 years. Very sprightly, very much looks after himself, has a cleaner once a fortnight, and he was specific in telling me that he likes to clean before the cleaner arrives. So that was quite enjoyable. I also met with a ABC journalist who has been allocated to Kwinana. She's a video journalist, a news journalist from the ABC, to have a chat to us about some good news stories. So it's not all about negative stories that quite often happen in the media about Kwinana. So that was great to have that opportunity, and hopefully in the coming weeks and months we'll see a number of positive stories about various things and various people within the city. And today I attended a reconciliation event at Medina Hall, which was put on by Nulla Yorga Wankan Women's Group. It was quite well attended. Mr. Fisher was there along with myself and a number of other city officers. It was very well attended, and it was good to commemorate or not celebrate, commemorate Reconciliation Week in the city. That is all. So, there are no confidential items. I would like to declare the meeting closed at 7:24. Thank you for your attendance.